The Guild of Mages headquarters was located in the capital of the Rising Sun Kingdom, the most prosperous kingdom on the continent. The Guild of Mages was a comprehensive and large organization for mages in the Odin Plane. It was rumored to be established by legendary mage Odin's disciple, who was serving as the general president himself. However, the general president, Mage Salik, had always been cultivating diligently. He had become a sanctuary mage since a long time ago, and had always been studying the laws of the plane. Despite this, he had never been able to take that critical step. He could not become a legendary mage, so he naturally could not follow in the footsteps of Mage Odin to conquer more planes. But at this moment, Mage Salik sensed something amiss and suddenly opened his eyes. Huh? This mental power is so strong. It seems to be comparable to a legendary mage. Also, there's that familiar fluctuation. A legendary mage. Has another legendary mage been born in the Odin plane? Or are they from an alternate plane? Salik was very surprised. A legendary mage in the Odin plane was not a small matter. A moment of carelessness might even lead to a battle between two legendary mages. Even though mages appeared rather unified in countless planes, no matter how unified they were, how could there be no disputes over interests? However, legendary mages usually did not fight to the death over the planes. At most, the weak would retreat voluntarily. Legendary mages could enter other planes, and would not fight to the death over a mere plane at all. It could be said that Mage Odin had asked Mage Salik to take care of the Odin plane. If anything went wrong, Mage Odin would definitely be very displeased. Mage Salik checked the source of the fluctuation immediately. It was vaguely from the east. Whether it's a legendary born in the Odin plane, or a legendary mage from another plane, I have to pay respects personally to such a distinguished entity. Mage Salik then stepped forward, tore through space directly, and entered the spatial passage. In the capital of the Azure Kingdom, Lin Feng's mental power covered the entire plane. Immediately, more than a dozen mages with powerful internal energy discovered Lin Feng's mental power. They should all be sanctuary mages. Only sanctuary mages who had begun to analyze the essence of the plane could discover Lin Feng's mental power fluctuations. More than 10 sanctuary mages in one plane. That's not bad. Lin Feng also roughly knew that there were basically a few sanctuary mages in a plane. If there were more than 10 of them, it would be considered a relatively good plane. This was the case for the Odin plane. There were more than 10 sanctuary mages. At the same time, there was another sphere of flames in Lin Feng's hand. Lin Feng was controlling the divine fire technique and attempting to integrate the fire origin in the Odin plane. This was actually equivalent to a legendary. At least these sanctuary mages could not tell. Lin Feng wanted to create the image of a legendary mage. Buzz. Traces of spatial ripples appeared in the void. An old man with a snow-white beard walked out of the spatial passage. He was wearing a loose mage's robe, and the aura on his body was even more unfathomable. A peak sanctuary mage. Lin Feng could tell at a glance that this old man was a peak sanctuary mage. He might also be the strongest sanctuary mage on the Odin plane. The old mage with white hair and beard was a peak sanctuary mage. The moment he saw Lin Feng, however, he was slightly stunned. But the next moment, he bowed respectfully and said, "Greetings, legendary mage. May I know where you are from, and why you are here in the Odin plane?" "Who are you?" Lin Feng asked indifferently. "I'm the disciple of legendary mage Odin, the president of the Guild of Mages on this plane, Salik." "So it's the president of the Guild of Mages, Mage Salik. You can call me Mage Merlin. I just came to the Odin plane by accident. I was just checking if there were any legendary mages, and didn't expect to alarm Mage Salik." Salik said in surprise, "Mage Merlin, it's our honor that you've come to the Odin plane. However, Mentor Odin has already gone to conquer other planes. I'm afraid he won't be able to rush back to the plane to welcome you. It's fine. I've just arrived and don't know the situation here. To be honest, I originally wanted to occupy a plane, and thought that the Odin plane was a good choice. Unfortunately, it's already taken." Lin Feng's words gave Mage Salik a huge shock. This Mage Merlin in front of him actually wanted to occupy the Odin Plane. If they really fought, even if there were more than 10 sanctuary mages in the Odin Plane, what was the use? They definitely could not stop a legendary mage. Hence, Mage Salic hurriedly said, "Esteemed Mage Merlin, it's not a wise decision to start a war over this plane. There are tens of thousands of other planes, which have yet to be occupied by us mages. Mage Merlin, you can head to those other planes and spread the wisdom and knowledge of mages there." Mage Salic knew very well that once a war over the plane broke out, Mage Odin would definitely respond. At that time, even multiple planes might even be broken. The gains would not make up for the losses. If not for entanglements of interests or life-or-death feuds, no one would invade a plane already occupied by a legendary mage. An alternate plane? Unfortunately, although there are many alternate planes, I don't know the exact coordinates of the alternate planes. I can't do anything about it. You don't know the coordinates of the alternate planes? Mage Salic found it very strange, but on second thought, perhaps Mage Merlin was from the other end of the mage civilization and lived in long-term peace. Thus, he had not gone to the front line in conquests of other planes. As for the Odin plane, it was actually not far from other alternate planes. Great Mage Merlin, we call this region the Corrido Domain. In the Corrido Domain, there are many unoccupied planes. There are many planar deities there, and they are very powerful. Even one or two ordinary legendary mages can't deal with them. Hence, the legendary mages have already joined forces, and are prepared to take their time to conquer these alternate planes one by one. If Great Mage Merlin needs it, I can give you the exact coordinates of the Corrido Domain. Actually, Lin Feng did not know anything about the Corrido Domain. Even if he obtained the coordinates, he would not know how to get there. He rolled his eyes and said, "I came to the Odin Plane by accident, so I don't know much about this area. Looks like Mage Merlin needs a guide. I need to guard the Odin Plane, so I can't accompany you. However, the Guild of Mages still has some sanctuary mages, who can be your guides. Right now, Mage Salic only wanted to send Lin Feng away as soon as possible. After all, every minute Lin Feng stayed in the Odin Plane meant another minute Odin Plane was in danger. That's great. Thank you for your trouble, Mage Salic." Lin Feng smiled. He had finally achieved his goal. As long as he could head to the alternate planes, he could do whatever he wanted, whether to occupy those unclaimed alternate planes or devour them. In the end, Lin Feng still decided to leave. However, before leaving, Lin Feng also asked Mage Salic to promise him one thing, and that was regarding Lady Para. Lin Feng had promised to be Lady Para's mentor and teach her about spells to allow Para to become a true mage. However, Lin Feng was about to leave the Odin Plane, and he naturally could not bring Para along. However, Lin Feng would not go back on his word. He asked Mage Salic to think of some ways to teach Para. Regarding this, Mage Salic naturally agreed readily, and took it very seriously. No matter what, Para was still a registered disciple of a legendary mage like Mage Merlin, and her identity was extraordinary. Hence, when Lin Feng brought Mage Salic back to his residence, Para still had a confused expression. "Mentor, Para. This is Mage Salic from the Guild of Mages." Para also bowed to Mage Salic. She knew about the Guild of Mages, which was a colossal organization among mages. As for Mage Salic, Para had naturally never heard of him. "Para, I'm leaving the Odin Plane," Lin Feng said directly. "What?" Para was stunned. Mage Merlin was leaving the Odin Plane. What was going on? For Para, who had always lived in the Odin Plane, this was unimaginable. Even powerful mages could not leave the Odin Plane whenever they wanted. However, she believed that Lin Feng would not make empty promises. "However, you don't need to worry. Mage Salic will teach you how to become a true noble mage." Lin Feng naturally knew about Para's wish. He knew that Para wanted to become a true mage. Salic would be able to fulfill Para's wish. Salic also put on a kind expression and said with a smile, "Para, your mentor is a legendary mage. He's about to leave the Odin Plane to conquer an alternate plane and spread the wisdom and knowledge of mages. You should be happy and wish Mage Merlin well. In the future, you can learn spells from me. You'll definitely become a true great mage." A legendary mage? My mentor, Mage Merlin, is a legendary mage who is about to conquer alternate planes. Although Para had almost never come into contact with mages, the title of legendary mage was famous. Even ordinary people knew what a legendary mage meant. After all, the master of the Odin plane, the great mage Odin, was a legendary mage. He was a great entity that could enslave deities and conquer planes. Para never expected her mentor to be such a great entity. Para, follow Mage Salik well and learn about spells. Lin Feng also encouraged Para. After a long while, Lady Para finally came back to her senses. She bit her lip and said, "Mentor, will you ever return to the Odin plane?" Lin Feng pondered for a moment and said, "Perhaps, perhaps not. However, as long as you study the knowledge of mages diligently, one day we will meet again." "Yes, mentor. Para will definitely work hard to learn about spells." Lady Para nodded earnestly. Lin Feng was also very gratified and completely assured. "Mage Corinne, let's go," Lin Feng said to a female sanctuary mage. This was also a sanctuary mage from the Guild of Mages. Mage Salik had recommended her to be Lin Feng's guide. Mage Corinne nodded and flew out of the plane with Lin Feng. Lin Feng followed behind Mage Corinne. As a sanctuary mage, she had also analyzed some planar laws and could even control these laws. Hence, her flying speed was also very fast. However, no matter how fast Corinne was, Lin Feng was unhurried and could always keep up. Swoosh! When Lin Feng came into contact with the planar membrane, it was like a soft membrane. Lin Feng and Corinne both easily passed through it. However, Corinne relied on the planar laws, while Lin Feng forced his way through the planar membrane. As expected of a legendary mage. Mage Merlin, we've already arrived at the Corrido domain. This is the planar corridor. Through this corridor, we can enter any plane in the Corrido domain. Corinne introduced the Corrido domain in detail, but Lin Feng investigated everything around him. In particular, this planar corridor was actually so miraculous. It was connected to one alternate plane after another. Not every plane was suitable for mages to modify, and not every plane was valuable. Only those alternate planes that produced life were worth conquest by legendary mages. Mage Merlin, which plane will you choose? Corinne asked curiously. Most of them were unclaimed alternate planes. Even the legendary mages had not had time to conquer them. Lin Feng smiled and said, "It's not easy to conquer these planes. There are also deities in these planes." "That's right. These deities are very powerful, and they give even Mage Odin a headache." Even when Mage Odin went to conquer the other planes, he joined forces with other legendary mages, Corinne said truthfully. "Mage Corinne, would you like to give it a try?" Corinne hurriedly shook her head and said, "It's not dangerous in the planar corridor, but if I enter an unclaimed alternate plane, a sanctuary mage like me won't be enough. If I can't analyze the laws of the alternate plane in a short period of time, it'll be troublesome. If you have no further questions, Mage Merlin, I'm going to return to the Odin plane." Lin Feng nodded and said, "I have no further questions. I'm afraid conquering an alternate plane will take a long time. Thank you for your trouble, Mage Corinne. May Mage Merlin conquer alternate planes with speed, and spread the wisdom and knowledge mages to more planes." With that, Mage Corinne bade farewell and left, returning to the Odin plane. After Corinne left, Lin Feng suddenly turned around. However, he could not hide the smile on his face. His eyes were even filled with excitement. In fact, be it those planes that produced life or those that did not, they were all great tonics to Lin Feng. However, in order not to let Corinne find out, Lin Feng deliberately wandered around the planar corridor for a long time, staying far away from the Odin plane. After confirming that no one was following him, he began to choose an alternate plane. There were many unclaimed alternate planes here. Every plane emitted a trace of aura. One could easily determine if a plane was powerful from its aura. The world of mages was composed of planes. One plane connected to another, forming a huge world. In fact, it was just like the chaos and merely differed in structure. The entirety of chaos was formed from origin universes and chaotic continents. So many unclaimed alternate planes were simply a godsend to Lin Feng. Let me see how strong the deities of unclaimed alternate planes are first. Lin Feng's mental power locked onto one of the planes with a rather massive aura. Then, his figure entered the alternate plane directly. Boom! The sky seemed to be torn apart, and a figure appeared in the sky. What a chaotic aura! This aura is somewhat similar to the origin. Lin Feng appeared in an alternate plane, and an unclaimed one at that. Volcanic eruptions and torrential floods were everywhere here. There were very few intelligent life forms. However, there were many powerful savage life forms. Lin Feng saw some life forms born from flames. They were very powerful and could manipulate flames in battle. All kinds of strange life forms came in an endless stream. They fought at every moment, plunging the entire plane into chaos. There was not even order in the plane. Order was the foundation for the thriving development of a plane, and the most basic condition for the birth of a civilization with intelligent life forms. Without order, it was far too difficult for a plane to give rise to an intelligent civilization. Lin Feng discovered some intelligent life forms. However, although they had intelligence, they were enslaved by countless natural life forms. There were too many natural life forms here, and there was even a powerful deity. This deity was born with this world, and was innately compatible with the laws of this world. It was the true son of providence. Strong providence was gathered on it, and its every move affected this plane. However, that powerful life form could not control the entire plane and become the ruler of the plane. This was fundamentally different from those legendary mages, who completely became the rulers of the planes. So, deities of a plane are actually born with the providence of the plane, and are favored by the plane. Although deities are strong, they can never rise above the plane. No wonder they'd be enslaved by the legendary mages. Lin Feng finally saw a planar deity with his own eyes, a native deity. He finally understood why deities could be defeated by legendary mages. Some legendary mages could even enslave these deities. Legendary mages were the foundation of analyzing planes. They spread knowledge and would not blindly believe in anything. Even power was not the object of worship of mages. What they worshipped was knowledge and intelligence. Mages might be very weak, but precisely due to their culture, they would eventually leave the plane step by step, and conquer tens of thousands of other planes. To mages, deities were just research subjects. In that case, there's no need for reservations. I'll devour it first. Lin Feng no longer hesitated. It was not easy for him to enter the world of mages. Having encountered such a world, Lin Feng naturally would not waste this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Universe descending. Lin Feng immediately unleashed his cosmic power. Immediately, the universe descended. The massive universe was different from any power in the world of mages. Hence, when the universe descended, the entire plane shook violently, but Lin Feng could not sense rejection from the entire world of mages. This meant that he could indeed use his cosmic power without reservations. Gore! The deity in the alternate plane roared loudly. It sensed the threat of death. However, Lin Feng's universe was like a huge net that instantly descended. A plane was much smaller than the immortal land. Even though the immortal land was also a minor world, it was much larger than a plane. A single immortal land was approximately equivalent to 10 alternate planes. Although the alternate plane was very small, it was still a world, a complete world. More importantly, Lin Feng could devour to his heart's content. This was almost impossible in other worlds, but here, there were no obstacles. Lin Feng already had experience in devouring worlds. Hence, devouring an alternate plane this time was all too familiar to Lin Feng, and incomparably easy. Soon, the roots of the chaotic lotus took root in the alternate plane and firmly controlled it. Infinite cosmic power began to invade this alternate plane, devouring it directly. An unfamiliar imprint appeared in Lin Feng's internal universe. This should be the imprint of the world of mages. Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat. Currently, there were already the chaotic imprint, abyssal imprint, netherworld imprint, and immortal land imprint in his internal universe. Now, there was another imprint of the world of mages. These imprints were all mixed in the universe, and were actually rather chaotic. Moreover, Lin Feng would definitely devour more world imprints in the future. If they continued to be so chaotic, it would actually be detrimental for the internal universe. Hence, with a thought, Lin Feng immediately made a decision. Rumble. In an instant, a storm brewed in Lin Feng's internal world, rendering everything apart. The entire internal universe was constantly shaking. At the same time, Lin Feng's internal universe suddenly divided into different spaces and different areas. It was like the dark domain of chaos, but somewhat different. His internal universe was divided into many different regions. Chaotic civilization. Lin Feng extended his hand and pointed. The space expanded infinitely, and an aura of chaos filled the space. Countless continents appeared, and many life forms appeared on them. It was like a chaos shrunken by countless times. There were many life forms among them, all half-chaotic life forms. The cultivation system was also the chaotic cultivation system. Immortal land civilization. Lin Feng swiped his finger again and created another space. Immediately, a paradise-like world appeared, 70 to 80% similar to the immortal land. Moreover, the cultivation system followed the cultivation system of the immortal land. Abyss civilization, a world filled with killing, gloom, and destruction appeared. There were even demons. This civilization was established according to Lin Feng's understanding of the abyssal devils in the chaos. Netherworld civilization. It was similar to the abyss, but there were also some differences. There were hundreds of levels in the netherworld, and on every level many netherworld lords living in the dark. The netherworld was even more brutal than the abyss. It also took after the cultivation system of the netherworld. Mage civilization. Lastly, there was the mage civilization. The civilization created was a replica of the mage civilization, based on Lin Feng's understanding of the entire world of mages. However, there was only one alternate plane in the mage civilization in Lin Feng's internal universe at the moment. Still, among all the civilizations, Lin Feng thought the most highly of the mage civilization. After all, the unique environment of the mage civilization could allow Lin Feng to devour many other planes. The potential was unimaginable. Every civilization had its own unique imprint. Now, Lin Feng had divided the internal universe into 5 different civilizations. Without Lin Feng's initiative, they would not come into contact with each other at all. They could develop their own civilization independently. The life forms of every civilization would return to the reincarnation realm after their deaths. Their memories would be erased, and they would reincarnate. They could even enter other civilizations. Subconsciously, after the 5 civilizations were divided, Lin Feng felt that there was something new to his internal universe. Even he could not explain it clearly. It was as if his internal universe was undergoing some kind of metamorphosis. The 5 major civilizations allowed the internal universe to begin a new round of metamorphosis. Lin Feng carefully sensed the changes in the universe in his body. Many images flashed through his mind. Back then, in the origin universe, Lin Feng had transformed into a universe. At that time, his internal universe actually used the origin universe as a template, and it allowed him to successfully transform into a universe. Everything was similar to the origin universe. Lin Feng also metamorphosed his internal universe in the direction of the origin universe. After that, Lin Feng entered the chaos and saw the majesty of chaos. At this moment, Lin Feng's internal universe began to undergo metamorphosis again. It no longer used the origin universe as a template, but the chaos as a template. The internal universe naturally metamorphosed in the direction of chaos. This metamorphosis was an entirely natural process. In fact, a special chaotic aura was developed in Lin Feng's internal universe, allowing the 3,000 universe demons to metamorphose into chaotic life forms. But now, after Lin Feng had come into contact with the immortal land, abyss, netherworld, and mage civilizations, his internal universe naturally underwent some changes. In reality, this change was already higher than Lin Feng's previous template of chaos. After all, even the chaos was only a chaotic civilization in Lin Feng's internal universe at this moment. In other words, Lin Feng's internal universe was not static, but constantly changing. This might be the most valuable thing about Lin Feng's universe. It could grow continuously and slowly metamorphose as Lin Feng cultivated. At the very least, the intent of Lin Feng's internal universe now had already far exceeded the chaos. If it continued to be perfected, Lin Feng's internal universe would definitely become stronger than the chaotic world in the future. However, this also required Lin Feng to be very patient and work very hard to have the internal universe metamorphose. Only then could he turn such a profound intent into reality, rather than an illusory concept. One plane is far from enough. Lin Feng looked at the internal universe. He had already successfully divided it. There was only one plane in the region of the mage civilization. It was lonesome and could not even compare to the immortal land. However, the potential of the mage civilization was very great. In the Corrido domain, there were simply too many unclaimed planes. The deities of ordinary planes were at most at the level of chaotic lifeforms, or at most peak chaotic lifeforms. Even if Lin Feng stood there and allowed the deities to attack, he would not be injured at all. More importantly, Lin Feng did not sense the heavenly principle's warning from the mage civilization when devouring an alternate plane. This was undoubtedly the best news for Lin Feng. Hence, Lin Feng continued to enter some other alternate planes and began to devour them without restraint. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. More and more alternate planes appeared in the mage civilization region in Lin Feng's internal universe. The mage civilization, formed from alternate planes, was undoubtedly becoming stronger and stronger. Even Lin Feng's internal universe became stronger. Devouring worlds allowed the universe in Lin Feng's body to be augmented substantially. This feeling was just too enjoyable. As Lin Feng devoured more and more planes, the number of unclaimed planes in the Corrido domain also decreased rapidly. Finally, Lin Feng devoured all the surrounding unclaimed planes. Ha! Lin Feng suddenly looked at a plane in front of him. There was a familiar aura in this alternate plane. It seemed to be the aura of a mage. Swoosh! Which legendary mage has arrived at the light firmament plane? A slightly wary voice echoed in the alternate plane. In particular, Lin Feng sensed a gaze from the distant void, firmly locked onto him. Legendary mage! Lin Feng looked at the void in front of him. An old man in a white robe was standing in the air. There seemed to be countless powerful forces imprisoned in his body, and Lin Feng even sensed a trace of the aura of the origin. 1. Those with the aura of the origin in the mage civilization could only be legendary mages. Legendary mages constantly analyzed planar laws, so they naturally carried a trace of the aura of the origin. I'm Mage Merlin. I just came from the Odom plane, Lin Feng said indifferently. Since there were no more unclaimed planes, Lin Feng naturally began to have designs on these planes occupied by legendary mages. Odom plane? That's Mage Odom's plane. Could a legendary mage have been born in Mage Odom's plane? This old mage seemed very surprised. He had also heard of Mage Odom. I'm Mage Lozen. I've already conquered 6 different planes, and they're all connected as one. Lin Feng looked over. Indeed, there were 6 adjacent planes that all had the aura of this Mage Lozen. So it's Mage Lozen. I've just become a legendary mage, so I don't know much about conquering planes. Can you enlighten me, Mage Lozen? Lin Feng put on a humble attitude of asking for guidance. Mage Lozen smiled and said, We mages are proud to spread wisdom and knowledge. Since you'd like to know about planes, I'll naturally answer all that I can. Actually, deities are the only slightly troublesome part about alternate planes. Those native deities are actually just born with the providence of the plane. They're nothing much. When mages like us analyze the planar laws, we are actually analyzing the origin of the plane. Once we analyze it thoroughly, we can gain complete control over the entire plane and mark the plane deeply with our imprint. Legendary mages analyze the planar laws. The more they analyze, the stronger the legendary mage will be. For example, I'm only a junior legendary mage. I've only analyzed 6 different planes, so I haven't obtained enough planar laws. If one can analyze more than 100 planes, they will basically be able to become a senior legendary mage. Such a great entity carries the power of countless planar laws with every move. They're simply unimaginably powerful. There are even mages who can analyze more than 1,000 planes. It's rumored that any mage who can analyze more than 1,000 planes can basically understand the essence of planes, understand the true meaning of a mage, and explore the true mysteries of knowledge. Such a mage is called an arcane mage, and has mastered the most profound knowledge of mages. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. This mage Lozan had the air of an elder. He introduced the cultivation path of legendary mages to Lin Feng in detail. Although this was actually common knowledge of the mage civilization, this was the first time Lin Feng had heard of it. It was of great significance. Junior legendary mages, senior legendary mages, and even arcane mages gave Lin Feng a relatively direct understanding of the top power of the mage civilization, the power of the legendary mages. Was an arcane mage comparable to a chaotic hallowed venerable and a ruler-level entity? Lin Feng did not know. He would only know after encountering one. How many arcane mages are there in the world of mages now? Lin Feng could not help but ask. How many arcane mages? Mage Lozan smiled, then shook his head and said, Mage Merlin. An arcane mage is the ultimate goal of all mages. Even though the mage civilization has developed to its current state, conquering tens of thousands of alternate planes, not a single arcane mage has been born. Not a single arcane mage? Lin Feng was stunned. But then, he was overjoyed. There were actually no arcane mages. If an arcane mage was a ruler-level entity, it meant that there was no ruler in the entire world of mages. This was simply a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for Lin Feng. I must devour the world of mages, the entire world of mages, for the eternal universe. At that time, there will undoubtedly be a true mage civilization in the internal universe. Lin Feng's heart burned with passion. Mages were very harmonious and open around each other. Mage Lozan hoped that Lin Feng could stay and discuss some knowledge with him, but Lin Feng found an excuse and refused. After all, he was not a true mage. He was only disguised as one. After leaving Mage Lozan's plane, Lin Feng began to make plans. Legendary mages only wanted to analyze planar laws. Moreover, the more laws they analyzed, the stronger they would be, and they might even become arcane mages in the end. Those were ruler-level entities equivalent to chaotic hallowed venerables. But now, it seemed that the timing of Lin Feng's arrival was perfect. Not a single arcane mage had actually been born in the world of mages yet. However, according to the current situation in the world of mages, it was only a matter of time before an arcane mage was born. The speed at which mages developed was extremely fast. From having a small plane at the beginning to when they first set foot on other planes, it only took 30,000 years. From the moment they set foot on other planes until now, it had not even been 20,000 years. It was obvious that analyzing planes also required time. The current mage civilization was still in its infancy. It was experiencing a period of continuous improvement. This was also the best time for Lin Feng to take advantage of the crisis. With my current strength, it's a little irrational to resist the mage civilization head-on. However, if I continue to devour planes, how can I find so many alternate planes? Moreover, once I devour too many, a famous legendary mage who doesn't even possess a single plane will naturally fall under suspicion. Therefore, I need some disguises. I should try my best to disguise myself as an ambitious and extraordinary legendary mage. A mage who only wants to plunder planes, occupy them, and increase his own strength. Lin Feng constantly perfected this plan, portraying himself as an ambitious legendary mage who conquered one plane after another. Even attacking those planes occupied by legendary mages would at most evoke some internal disputes within the mage civilization, and would not lead to unanimous hostility among the entire mage civilization. Although there were very few ambitious mages like this, it was not unheard of. Just the process of devouring unclaimed alternate planes is too slow. If I can disguise myself as an ambitious legendary mage, there will be alternate planes everywhere. After conquering them, I can quietly devour a little of the alternate planes and add them up. No one will discover it. By the time they really discover it, my strength will already have expanded countless times. It won't be impossible for me to resist the entire mage civilization, or even arcane mages. Lin Feng perfected the plan bit by bit. Without an arcane mage, which was a ruler-level entity, no one would be able to discover the fact that Lin Feng was constantly devouring and plundering alternate planes. This gave Lin Feng a chance to devour the entire world of mages into his internal universe. It had to be known that the world of mages was a world slightly inferior to the chaos. Once he devoured it, how strong would Lin Feng become? Even Lin Feng himself could not imagine it. In order to make the plan more successful, Lin Feng spent some time and finally found 2 more unclaimed planes. However, this time, Lin Feng did not devour these 2 unclaimed planes. Instead, he killed the deities on the unclaimed planes and used the method of a legendary mage to occupy these 2 planes. This was the style of a standard legendary mage. These 2 alternate planes also became the Merlin planes. With these 2 alternate planes, no one should be able to see through Lin Feng's disguised identity. Next, it was time to take action. It's about time. I'll use the Corrido domain as the starting point and slowly devour the entire world of mages. A smile appeared on Lin Feng's lips. It had been a full 3,000 years since the great legendary mage Olsen descended into the Olsen plane to spread the wisdom and knowledge of mages. Mage Olsen already had 9 planes under his command, but he did not go on more conquests for a long time. This was because Mage Olsen had not even completely analyzed the laws of the 9 planes. Legendary mages also had varying levels of strength and comprehension ability. Some legendary mages might be able to analyze the laws of a plane and understand the mysteries of the planar origin in a few months or a few years. However, some legendary mages might take decades or centuries to analyze the laws of a plane. Mage Olsen was such a mage who did not have much comprehension ability. However, his mentality was very good, and he was tireless in seeking knowledge. Hence, Mage Olsen could grow step by step from a junior mage with mediocre aptitude to his current level. He knew that one had to be rigorous in the pursuit of knowledge and have a clear understanding of their own abilities. Mage Olsen did not plan to conquer other planes before fully analyzing the 9 planes. Rumble. Suddenly, a terrifying mental power swept through the 9 alternate planes. It was as if a fire deity had descended, but they were far stronger than a fire deity. Which legendary mage has descended in my plane? Mage Olsen was shocked and furious. Forcefully descending into an occupied plane like this was completely provocative. He had already tried his best to engrave his imprint in the alternate plane. Any legendary mage would be able to discover it, and there could be no misunderstandings. Just as Mage Olsen came to the sky of the plane in anger, he saw an unfamiliar legendary mage. I am Mage Merlin. These 9 alternate planes will become the planes under my command. I will analyze the laws of these 9 alternate planes. Choose to submit or leave. The one who descended into the Olsen plane was naturally Lin Feng. He had already begun his operation, and he immediately chose a legendary mage. He had also heard that this Mage Olsen was not very powerful. He only had 9 alternate planes, and had yet to successfully analyze them. Mage Olsen was furious. He said angrily, Mage Merlin, knowledge can be shared, but the dignity of a mage cannot be trampled on. If you need to analyze the laws of the planes, you can analyze it with me, but if you forcefully barge into my plane, you are my enemy. I absolutely will not hold back against my enemies. Hearing this, the corners of Lin Feng's lips twitched slightly. He was really a little speechless. Everything about these mages was great, except they were a little too harmonious around each other. He had already descended into the Olsen plane, yet Mage Olsen was still willing to share the plane, analyze the planar laws, and exchange magical knowledge. This was not due to weakness. After all, when legendary mages conquered alternate planes, they would not show any mercy to deities or living beings that dared to resist. The hands of mages were stained with the blood of countless living beings. However, they appeared very magnanimous around other legendary mages. It was no wonder that after so many years, there had really not been many disputes and battles over alternate planes in the world of mages. But Lin Feng's goal was not really to analyze the plane. He could not analyze planes like a mage either. He wanted to create an image of ambitiousness. Hence, Lin Feng could only use force against Mage Olsen. If you won't submit or leave, let's fight. There was no emotion in Lin Feng's cold voice. He had already decided to fight. Then let's fight in the planar corridor to avoid destroying the alternate planes. Mage Olsen's gaze was cold. He had already exercised extreme restraint, and did not expect this unfamiliar legendary mage in front of him to still be unwilling to let the matter rest. In that case, Mage Olsen was not prepared to compromise. Although the growth of a mage was always focused on pursuing knowledge, there was also no lack of battles. Every legendary mage was an expert with extremely rich combat experience, and would not be afraid of any battle. Swoosh, swoosh. The two of them quickly left the plane and arrived at the planar corridor. This place was empty. Even a battle between legendary mages would not affect the planes. However, such a huge commotion between the two of them also attracted the gazes of the surrounding people. After all, the planes in the Corrido domain were relatively concentrated. Near Olsen Plain, there were many other planes occupied by legendary mages. What's going on? That's Mage Olsen, right? That's right. Mage Olsen seems to be fighting another mage in the planar corridor. Fighting? Mages can always communicate with each other, discuss knowledge, and pursue the true meaning of knowledge together. Why fight? I know that unfamiliar mage. I think his name is Mage Merlin. He communicated with me not long ago. Mage Merlin currently occupies 2 alternate planes. Could it be that he feels that he doesn't have enough alternate planes and wants to analyze more planes, so he started a war? The mental power of many legendary mages communicated continuously, and they already understood most of what's going on. They naturally disapproved of Lin Feng's actions. Why would a legendary mage need so many alternate planes in such a short period of time? They could not be completely analyzed. It's better to focus on pursuing knowledge and exploring the true meaning of knowledge. Lin Feng and Mage Olsen naturally sensed the gazes of many legendary mages nearby, and knew that many legendary mages' attention was on them. However, Lin Feng and Olsen's reactions were different. Mage Olsen only wanted to defeat Lin Feng and protect his dignity as a mage. Lin Feng, on the other hand, felt that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to build his ambitious image and give people a deep impression of it. Hence, Lin Feng was the first to attack. Planar fire! Lin Feng pointed, and the entire planar corridor seemed to be suffused with raging flames. They seemed capable of burning everything and reducing everything to ashes. Actually, this was the divine fire technique. Lin Feng had only changed the name to make it look more like a spell that belonged to mages. In reality, the divine fire technique was indeed a spell, because it was composed of the essence of fire. Legendary mages also studied the essence of planar laws. These different paths led to the same destination. At the level of a legendary mage, one no longer relied purely on the magical elements to release spells. Rather, they used planar laws and the planar origin. What? This spell? Mage Olsen was shocked. Faced with the flames that filled the sky, the various planar laws in his body began to circulate. Boom! A monstrous flood appeared out of thin air. This spell unleashed by Mage Olsen was based on planar laws. This was also the first time Lin Feng had seen a spell used by a legendary mage. Just the power of this spell alone was actually comparable to a peak chaotic lifeform. A legendary mage was slightly stronger than Lin Feng had imagined. However, this bit of power could not extinguish Lin Feng's flames. This was the divine fire technique. Its true power was akin to that of an ultimate divine ability, a terrifying power that could kill chaotic hallowed beasts. Lin Feng had only unleashed a little of it, and suppressed the power of the flames with all his might. However, no matter how he suppressed it, it still had the power of a peak chaotic lifeform, or even a little stronger, reaching the power of a chaotic divine beast. Thud, thud, thud. The difference in fundamental strength manifested itself. When the monstrous flood doused the flames, not only did it not extinguish the flames burned even more fiercely. In a battle of spells, the winner was immediately obvious. Mage Merlin, your analysis of planar laws is far deeper than mine, and your spells are stronger. These 9 planes will be your spoils of war. I choose to leave. Although Mage Olsen's expression was very despondent, he did not risk his life anymore, because he knew that there was no chance of winning even if he risked his life. Mages were very rational when pursuing knowledge. They would not risk their lives unless absolutely necessary. Moreover, it was just planes. They could always find more. He admitted defeat? Lin Feng was a little stunned. This was only one spell, one single strike. Mage Olsen was not even injured much. However, Mage Olsen had actually admitted defeat and left the planar corridor directly without any hesitation. Looks like I still don't know enough about the world of mages, especially legendary mages. Lin Feng shook his head. However, Mage Olsen admitting defeat so easily saved him a lot of trouble. Sensing that there were still many legendary mages spying on him, Lin Feng ignored them. Instead, he entered the Olsen plane directly and integrated all 9 planes into his system. Currently, Lin Feng had already occupied 11 planes, but he had no intention of devouring them at all. This was because it was not the time yet. Right now, he was actually being watched by many legendary mages in secret. Once he gave any clues or made any movements, those legendary mages would definitely know. At this moment, he absolutely could not act rashly, let alone devour the planes. Moreover, Lin Feng was not in a hurry. He had stayed in the Olsen plane for about a month. Just as everyone thought that Lin Feng would give up, he forcefully descended into Mage Berglin's plane. Mage Berglin occupied 7 planes, and his strength was about the same as Mage Olsen's. After another not too intense battle, Mage Berglin also chose to leave. The number of planes Lin Feng owned also increased to 18. As Lin Feng continued to attack, the legendary mages of the Corrido domain finally understood Lin Feng's ambition. His target was actually the entire Corrido domain. Lin Feng was ambitious and wanted to take over the entire Corrido domain. It had to be known that there were hundreds of other planes, and as many as 20 legendary mages in the entire Corrido domain. As Lin Feng defeated more and more legendary mages, and occupied more and more planes, the legendary mages of the Corrido domain finally felt a sense of crisis. We have to join forces, and banish this ambitious Mage Merlin from the Corrido domain. That's right. Mage Merlin is too ambitious. He has already been blinded by power. He thinks only of power, rather than pursuing the true meaning of knowledge and exploring the essence of knowledge. Mage Merlin is fully focused on pursuing strength, and drove away many legendary mages. He has already gone astray. We must join forces and banish him completely. The legendary mages were knowledgeable, and all of them were full of intelligence. They naturally knew that Lin Feng's plan was to defeat them one by one, so that he could occupy the entire Corrido domain. However, how could the remaining legendary mages let Lin Feng have his way? Hence, the remaining dozen or so legendary mages had already spontaneously joined forces, intending to attack together and expel the ambitious Mage Merlin from the Corrido domain, so that the Corrido domain could return to peace. Lin Feng did not comment on this. The alliance of more than 10 legendary mages was nothing to Lin Feng. Moreover, he happened to be waiting for these legendary mages to join forces as well. This way, he would not have to defeat them one by one. It would save him a lot of trouble. Once he occupied the Corrido domain, Lin Feng could devour the planes without restraint. Hence, the 2 parties had already agreed to determine the winner in the planar corridor. The winner would own the Corrido domain, and the loser would leave. As many as 18 legendary mages had gathered in the planar corridor of the Corrido domain. The experts among them had already analyzed dozens of planes. The weaker ones had only analyzed 1 or 2 planes. Mage Odom, have you investigated thoroughly? Is this Mage Merlin a legendary mage born in your plane? In the crowd, there was a thin old man in a white mage's robe. He was Mage Odom. At this moment, Mage Odom frowned and shook his head. I've already investigated. Mage Merlin appeared in the Odom plane first. He seemed to have come to the Odom plane by accident. According to my judgment, Mage Merlin shouldn't be a mage from the Corrido domain. He should have come from another plane. From another plane? The legendary mages also frowned. There were countless alternate planes in the world of mages. It would probably be very difficult to find out Lin Feng's origins. Moreover, so what if they found it? Lin Feng wanted to dominate the entire Corrido domain, and they did not have the strength to stop him. There was nothing they could do. Mage Lozin was very hesitant, but still said, "I've interacted with Mage Merlin before. Mage Merlin seems quite amiable. He didn't forcefully occupy my plane back then. How did he suddenly become so ambitious?" Naturally, no one responded to Mage Lozin's words. It was already publicly acknowledged that Mage Merlin was ambitious. As for why Merlin had become so ambitious, this was not something they could know. "He's here." Suddenly, a mage discovered something. A figure slowly walked over from the distant plane. It was Mage Merlin. Merlin walked over step by step. There was clearly no fluctuation of power on his body, but the many legendary mages appeared very solemn. This was power. By now, Lin Feng had defeated the legendary mage time and again, seizing many alternate planes. He had already become the undisputed top legendary mage in the entire Corrido domain. This reputation naturally gave off an invisible might. Lin Feng also saw an acquaintance among these legendary mages. It was Mage Lozin. When Mage Lozin saw Lin Feng, he could not help but say, "Mage Merlin? Why do you have to do this? Wouldn't it be better if we exchange spell knowledge with each other and explore the mysteries of knowledge together?" Lin Feng glanced at Mage Lozin. This Mage Lozin was a traditional mage and a nice guy. Even Lin Feng did not have the heart to make Mage Lozin his first target back then. In reality, many legendary mages were like Mage Lozin. Apart from killing deities and implicating some normal living beings when conquering alternate planes, most of the time, they were exploring the mysteries of knowledge. Very few mages were dedicated to pursuing strength and the power of spells. After the mages occupied alternate planes, what they did first was not to plunder, but to modify the environment of the entire plane and disseminate the knowledge of the mages without any reservations. The world of mages was magnanimous, at least much better than any world Lin Feng had ever seen. At least in terms of disseminating knowledge, the world of mages had no reservations at all. Apart from them, cultivation knowledge was actually very limited in civilizations such as the Immortal Land and Chaotic Civilization. They were all monopolized by some faction, and it was very difficult to obtain knowledge. However, the mage civilization was different. Knowledge was all public and accessible. As long as one had the talent to become a mage, there would basically be no obstacles. Maybe this was also why the mage civilization could step out of the plane and conquer tens of thousands of other planes in less than 50,000 years, creating a powerful mage civilization. Perhaps this was the most fundamental reason. However, Lin Feng was not a true mage. His goal was not to pursue the true meaning of knowledge at all. He only had one goal: to devour alternate planes and even the entire world of mages to increase the power of his internal universe. "I'm sorry, Mage Lozin. I have my own goal. This can be avoided if you all take the initiative to leave the Corrido domain," Lin Feng replied indifferently. "All right. There's destined to be a battle today. Mage Merlin, we respect your choice. If you want to monopolize the Corrido domain, we won't agree to it. If you don't agree, we can only fight." Lin Feng had also roughly figured out the temperament of these mages. As long as he could defeat them, they would leave the Corrido domain. Moreover, they would keep their word, and would never return to the Corrido domain to cause trouble. Attack! At this moment, more than 10 legendary mages were converging the power of dozens or hundreds of planar laws. At this moment, they were actually vaguely and completely integrated into one, turning into a terrifying spell. This spell was a storm, but this storm made Lin Feng feel as if he was facing dozens or hundreds of planes. The power of this spell had already reached the level of a senior legendary mage. Normally, only mages who had analyzed 100 planes could become a senior legendary mage. Interesting, but it's not enough. Far from enough. Lin Feng shook his head. Although this strike was already vaguely comparable to the power of a peak chaotic spirit beast, or even a chaotic divine beast, Lin Feng was a hallowed lord. Divine Fire Technique. Lin Feng waved his hand, and flames filled the entire planar corridor, turning the entire planar corridor into a sea of inferno. The wind fueled the flames. As long as the storm spells of these legendary mages could not extinguish the flames of Lin Feng's Divine Fire Technique, they could not do anything to Lin Feng. The Divine Fire Technique was an ultimate divine ability. It could even kill chaotic hallowed beasts, let alone a spell that barely reached the power of a chaotic divine beast. Boom! The flames became even more exuberant and ignited violently, causing these legendary mages to tremble. They sensed the aura of death, as if they would be burned to ashes by these flames. The mages' senses could not be wrong. These flames were really terrifying to the extreme. A senior legendary mage. Mage Merlin must be a senior legendary mage who has analyzed more than 100 planes. What a terrifying fire spell. I even seem to sense the essence of fire from it. These flames vaguely contain a trace of the essence of fire. He has actually analyzed the essence of fire. Mage Merlin's understanding of fire has already far exceeded ours. We've lost. We've already lost. Many legendary mages were in a daze, but the way they looked at Lin Feng changed slightly. Lin Feng's Divine Fire Technique seemed to contain a trace of the essence of fire. He must have studied flames to a very profound level for the essence of flames to possibly appear. In the eyes of these legendary mages, Lin Feng had already gone from a power-hungry legendary mage to a knowledgeable and astonishingly intelligent senior legendary mage. Esteemed Mage Merlin, your attainments and spells have already surpassed ours. We abide by the agreement. We shall leave the Corrido domain now, and shall never set foot in this region again. With that, the remaining dozen or so legendary mages left the Corrido domain one by one. From then on, the entire Corrido domain, with its hundreds of alternate planes, all belonged to Lin Feng. Lin Feng had already become the true master of Corrido. He was a powerful and ambitious senior legendary mage. As many legendary mages in the Corrido domain were forced to leave, the news spread. The name Mage Merlin also occupied an important place in the world of mages. However, they were all a little worried about the legendary mages and the other planes around the Corrido domain. Would the ambitious Mage Merlin continue to choose to expand his territory? In the Corrido domain, Lin Feng was now the true ruler of Corrido. After becoming the ruler of Corrido, Lin Feng stopped for a while. He had to digest the fruits of victory. After all, Lin Feng was the only legendary mage in the entire Corrido domain at the moment. There was no need to worry about others spying on him. Lin Feng even sent out an announcement. No mages were allowed to enter the Corrido domain, unless they reported it to him and obtained his permission. Although it caused an uproar, Lin Feng did not care. He spent a period of time tabulating the various planes in the entire Corrido domain. Among them, there were a total of 132 planes with living beings. There were more than 200 lifeless planes. Although most of the lifeless alternate planes were desolate, there were also some with the potential to produce life. Lin Feng did not hesitate to directly devour all 200 or so lifeless alternate planes into his internal universe. Then, there were more than 100 alternate planes with life. These were the most important. Lin Feng carefully chose 100 alternate planes and devoured them all, leaving only 20-odd alternate planes for show. After all, if mages really entered the Corrido domain and saw a few dozen planes, they would not be suspicious. After Lin Feng devoured most of the alternate planes in the Corrido domain, his internal universe immediately began to undergo earth-shattering changes. Rumble. In the area where the mage civilization in the internal universe was located, various alternate planes constantly descended and expanded the entire region. Even those planes with life forms only experienced momentary tremors before calm returned. If a sanctuary mage left the plane and entered the planar corridor, they would also discover that there were many other alternate planes around which were no different from the world of mages. This was the truly impressive part about it. Even if it had already been devoured by Lin Feng's internal universe, it could still be passed off as reality, and no one could distinguish it. After all, these planes were all real. Power. So much power. Even Lin Feng himself was amazed. More than 100 planes with life and more than 200 planes with life were devoured into the internal universe. The entire internal universe was shaking violently. Even the chaotic lotus had grown by more than 10 times at once, becoming so huge that it blotted out everything, and was deeply rooted in every stretch of space in the universe. Among the 5 civilizations in the internal universe, the mage civilization had undoubtedly surpassed all civilizations and became the undisputed top civilization. After some time, a legendary mage might be born among the mages. That was a legendary mage equivalent to a chaotic life form. Moreover, a powerful legendary mage was even equivalent to a perfected deity. Given enough time, the mage civilization would even be able to beat the other 4 civilizations hands down. However, there was no such thing as balance in Lin Feng's internal universe at all. It was completely unnecessary. Even if he devoured the entire world of mages, and the mage civilization stood out, it would only benefit his internal universe without any detriments. This was because every civilization occupied a separate regional space in the internal universe. As the internal universe continued to expand, this region would also continue to expand. There would be no disputes at all. Moreover, as he constantly devoured the alternate planes of the world of mages, the reincarnation realm in Lin Feng's internal universe also continued to expand. More and more life forms in the world of mages died, and their memories and imprints were erased by the reincarnation realm, allowing them to reincarnate. Looking at the constantly expanding power of his internal universe and the hundreds of alternate planes in the mage civilization, a thought suddenly appeared in Lin Feng's mind. If I devour the entire world of mages, could the world of mages develop a will one day? The world's will was the heavenly principle, and was even above ruler-level entities. Even chaotic hallowed venerables could only be considered the embodiments of the heavenly principle, the embodiments of the world's will. Right now, the world of mages was in chaos. Despite all of Lin Feng's devouring, no will of the world had tried to stop him. The world had probably yet to develop a will. If the world developed a will, what would happen? Would it conflict with the internal universe? After all, if a will was developed in a complete world, it would not allow coexistence with other worlds. However, if the world's will was born in the internal universe, would it be subtly affected by the internal universe? After all, the internal universe now included 5 civilizations, and every civilization might metamorphose into a complete world. The internal universe belonged to a tier above these complete worlds. Lin Feng did not know what would happen to his internal universe in the future. He did not know what would happen if a world's will appeared in the world of mages. He could only rely on himself to slowly explore and cultivate his internal universe. The power from 100 planes with life and more than 200 planes without life is actually about the same. Perhaps those planes without life are useless to mages, but they are crucial to my internal universe. Lin Feng carefully sensed the changes in his internal universe after devouring the alternate planes. His strength improved steadily. Even Lin Feng himself did not know what level his current strength had reached, but it was definitely far stronger than before he entered the world of mages. However, this was still not enough. Far from enough. The Corrido domain is just the beginning. Lin Feng's eyes were already on an area outside the Corrido domain. It was similar to the Corrido domain. The number of planes with or without life totaled more than 300, close to 400. That was the Tai's domain. Swoosh! In the distant Tai's domain, an uninvited guest suddenly appeared in the planar corridor. This is the Tai's domain. Oh, it's somewhat different from the Corrido domain. There are no longer any unclaimed planes here. There are also many more legendary mages than the Corrido domain. Lin Feng was wearing a white robe and was already dressed like a standard mage. He had come to the Tai's domain alone precisely to target the Tai's domain. He was planning to conquer the Tai's domain as well and completely integrate it with the Corrido domain. Once he succeeded, it would be very beneficial to both concealing the truth that he had devoured most of the alternate planes in the Corrido domain and tangibly increasing the power of his internal universe. Moreover, Lin Feng also knew very well that the Tai's domain might be the last area he could take down with ease. Once he took over the Tai's domain, the entire world of mages would definitely be in an uproar. At that time, he, the ambitious Mage Merlin, would definitely receive the attention of the entire mage civilization. Lin Feng could not guarantee that he could still completely conceal his goal. Hence, what Lin Feng needed to do now was to act fast. Lin Feng would try his best to occupy as many planes as possible before the world of mages could catch on. Only by accumulating some capital could he possibly resist those powerful legendary mages in the mage civilization in the future, and even arcane mages. After all, an arcane mage had yet to be born in the mage civilization, but once Lin Feng's identity was exposed, that might not be the case. Lin Feng had to be fully prepared. What a wonderful world, and such wonderful planes. Unfortunately, these mages don't know how to make use of these planes. In that case, I will devour them all. A smile appeared on Lin Feng's lips. He knew that his path of plundering was about to begin in this world. Moreover, once he embarked on this path, there was no turning back. Then, Lin Feng took a deep breath and commanded it with his mind. Boom! Without any warning, the universe descended. The mighty universe descended. Immediately, the entire sky of the Tai's domain seemed to go dark. What is that? This is bad. The plane is in turmoil. Someone is invading the plane. What a terrifying pressure. Even the spell of a senior legendary mage can't be so powerful. This is a power that can crush all the planes into dust. I see it, I see it. It's Mage Merlin, the ambitious legendary mage from the Corrido domain. He's attacking our Tai's domain. Many legendary mages used spells one after another, trying to stop the dissension of Lin Feng's internal universe. However, this was Lin Feng's internal universe, not the divine fire technique. It was 100 or 1,000 times stronger than the divine fire technique. Even chaotic hallowed beasts could not resist the cosmic power in Lin Feng's body. Even chaotic hallowed venerables might not be able to resist it, let alone dozens of legendary mages. Lin Feng crushed them purely with strength. When the internal universe directly descended, it instantly fell like a huge bowl, enveloping the entire Tai's domain. All legendary spells, laws, and the origin were useless. Boom! Finally, the universe descended completely, devouring the entire Tai's domain. All the legendary mages tensed as if they were facing a formidable enemy, and sensed the aura of death. However, the sky only turned dark for a moment. Before things calmed down once more, they saw densely packed alternate planes, and there was a very familiar feeling. This seems to be the Odom plane. That's the Lozan plane. Could this be the Corrido domain? Heavens! What exactly is going on? None of the legendary mages were dead. In fact, the plane only shook for a moment before calming down. It was as if they had been teleported into another space as a whole. In reality, that was indeed the case. The entire Tai's domain had been moved into the internal universe as a whole. The mage civilization in Lin Feng's internal universe was almost identical to the world of mages. The only difference might be that the internal universe was looming above. Any legendary mage could sense that great and unique power. Only the legendary mages could sense it. However, when they tried to break through, they couldn't do it at all. Success! Lin Feng had forcefully devoured the entire Tai's domain, and the result proved that it was feasible. Though Lin Feng's way of devouring was very similar to the fiends Lin Feng had dealt with back then. Still, there was a huge difference. Even after devouring those legendary mages, these legendary mages might eventually be able to slowly find out that they were already in a completely different world. They knew the truth. However, Lin Feng did not kill them. This was the greatest difference from fiends. Planar life forms that Lin Feng had devoured, even legendary life forms, could continue to survive. They could even cultivate and could continue to analyze the planes and constantly grow stronger. Only when the time was up and the legendary mages died would they enter the reincarnation realm, where all traces of the world of mages would be completely erased, and they would truly become a part of the internal universe. Lin Feng still followed the natural way of allowing life to reincarnate, rather than forcefully killing and sending them to reincarnation. There was still a fundamental difference between him and fiends. At Lin Feng's level, death was actually not a true disappearance. Even death could allow one to enter the cycle of reincarnation. In Lin Feng's eyes, true death was the complete loss of all imprints, without even the chance to enter the cycle of reincarnation. That was true death. Now that the Tai's domain had appeared in Lin Feng's internal universe, it was equivalent to an addition of more than 300 alternate planes. His internal universe naturally expanded rapidly again, and his strength increased constantly. The speed was unbelievable. This was much faster than analyzing planes. However, Lin Feng did not stop at all. He knew that this action must have attracted the attention of the mage civilization. Hence, while there was still time, he had to try to devour some more planes as quickly as possible. There were many other alternate planes adjacent to the Tai's domain. Lin Feng was like a gluttonous beast, simply rampant. Wherever he passed, the internal universe would descend, and he would instantly devour one plane after another. The entire mage civilization fell into a temporary dazed state. Since when had the mage civilization suffered such a heavy blow? All along, the mages had been the victors. They had entered tens of thousands of planes, enslaved deities, and spread intelligence and knowledge. They were great and powerful, looking down on billions of living beings. But now, everything seemed to have been reversed. The foundation of the mage civilization was suffering a devastating blow. The bizarre disappearances of one alternate plane after another finally put the mage civilization on full alert. The Lanka plane was the ancestral land of mages, and the cradle of the mage civilization. The great mage civilization was born in the Lanka plane and developed step by step to its current prosperous level. But now, the atmosphere in the Lanka plane was tense. Mages, we've already investigated thoroughly. That Mage Merlin is not a legendary mage at all, but a kind of monster life form with a completely different world aura. He might even be a life form from beyond the planar dark domain. An advanced legendary mage said coldly. At once, many legendary mages discussed agitatedly, and a trace of shock appeared on their faces. Mages were not completely ignorant about the planar dark domain. They knew that while there seemed to be countless planes, they were actually a whole and belonged to one world. On the other hand, the planar dark domain should be at the end of the world. However, many mages suspected that there were also some powerful life forms or civilizations in the planar black domain. Now that a Mage Merlin had appeared, it seemed to have confirmed that there were indeed other life forms or civilizations in the planar dark domain. That Mage Merlin is constantly devouring planes. We've investigated and confirmed that the disappeared planes won't appear again. It's equivalent to constantly diminishing our planes, while that Mage Merlin seems to be constantly growing stronger. We lose innumerable planes for every day's delay. Fact has proven that even advanced legendary mages like us are far from that Mage Merlin's match. The other party has a very powerful spell that can devour everything in an instant, including advanced legendary mages. No matter how many mages we send, it's useless. What we need is power that surpasses senior legendary mages. Only the arcane mages of the myths might be able to save the mage civilization. If we wish to preserve the mage civilization, we can only fight to the end. Hence, I suggest that the mage civilization should unite completely. We would open up all the planes completely and share all the knowledge from planar analysis. Every legendary mage would share the essence of planar laws. We must strive to give rise to an arcane mage. As soon as he finished speaking, all the legendary mages did not hesitate at all. I agree. Agreed. Knowledge should be shared. When the mage civilization faces a life or death crisis, there is only more reason for knowledge to be shared. I agree. Only an arcane mage can save the mage civilization. I agree to share all the knowledge of mages and facilitate the birth of an arcane mage as soon as possible. For a time, the entire mage civilization was completely united. They were unified to resist the evil life form from another world together. Mage Merlin, Corrido domain, Tai's domain, Layman domain. In a short period of time, Lin Feng's behavior could be considered insane. He ravenously devoured almost 1,000 alternate planes directly. It had to be known that according to the strength classification of legendary mages in the mage civilization, if one analyzed 100 planes, they would be a senior legendary mage. If one analyzed 1,000 planes, they would be an arcane mage of the myths. Lin Feng, on the other hand, had devoured a total of 1,000 planes. Although he did not analyze them, it was even more thorough than analyzing planes. This was because after devouring the plane, everything in that plane would belong to Lin Feng and become a part of the internal universe. Hence, even though Lin Feng was not an arcane mage, he was confident that he was comparable to an arcane mage, or even stronger. Of course, an arcane mage also had an advantage. In the world of mages, if an arcane mage was really as Lin Feng had guessed, and was actually a world ruler-level entity like the chaotic hallowed venerables, they could constantly mobilize all the power in the world of mages. At that time, Lin Feng would have to be cautious. This was also why Lin Feng was so anxious. He kept devouring alternate planes one after another, and only wished he could devour all the planes in the entire world of mages. This was because the more planes he devoured, the less planes there would be for any ruler-level entity the world of mages might give rise to in the future. Leaving them with the power of fewer planes was naturally wholly beneficial to Lin Feng. During this period of time, Lin Feng devoured one plane after another in a frenzy, but the mage civilization did not seem to have made any major moves. No legendary mage could contend with Lin Feng. However, Lin Feng also received a message while devouring the planes. The many advanced legendary mages of the mage civilization had held a meeting and had already made a major decision. They were determined to completely share all the knowledge of mages, including the analyzed planar laws. Even Lin Feng was amazed when he heard this news. The mage civilization was indeed the most open-minded civilization he had ever seen. This magnanimity was greater than any civilization. Even without any absolute leader, the mage civilization could actually integrate all their power without meeting any resistance. They were even willing to share all their knowledge, allowing countless mages to learn a large amount of knowledge. In such an environment, the birth of an arcane mage was no longer a question, but a matter of time. An arcane mage would be born sooner or later. In particular, since the mage civilization had decided to share all their knowledge, the birth of an arcane mage would only happen sooner rather than later. An arcane mage might be born tomorrow, the day after, or perhaps the day after that. I don't have much time left. If an arcane mage is born, I'll be in trouble. Lin Feng muttered softly as one thought after another flashed through his mind. He knew very well that once an arcane mage was born, if they were really a ruler-level entity, even if he could contend against them, it would probably be very difficult to devour one plane after another like he did so easily in the present. Currently, Lin Feng was devouring dozens of planes, all of which were enveloped by the internal universe. Many legendary mages were also devoured into the internal universe along with them. Boom! Lin Feng suddenly looked up at the sky, as if there was a bolt from the blue. Just now, he sensed a terrifying fluctuation. It felt like a fluctuation of the heavenly principle in the world of mages. Could an arcane mage have been born? Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat as he thought of a possibility. Once an arcane mage was born, it was very likely that they would be a world ruler-level entity. If not all the ruler-level entities in the world of mages had taken up their positions, the world of mages would not be consummate. However, even Lin Feng was not certain that he could deal with a terrifying entity comparable to a chaotic hallowed venerable, who also had infinite power in the world of mages. Buzz. In the Lanka plane, the entire plane was shaking violently. One of the legendary mages, who was also the strongest legendary mage at the moment, suddenly opened his eyes. He looked up at the sky. At this moment, he had never felt so clear-headed, as if he could see through all the secrets in the sky. So the world of mages is not infinite after all. Mage Illumin muttered softly, as if he was talking to himself. Previously, he was the strongest legendary mage in the mage civilization. He had already analyzed more than 700 planes, and was undoubtedly the strongest legendary mage. However, faced with the threat of the evil alien lifeform Mage Merlin, his analysis of 700 planes did not seem to be much. He was not confident that he could defeat Mage Merlin. Hence, taking advantage of the decision made by the various legendary mages to share all their knowledge, including the analyses of planar laws, Mage Illumin seized this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. In a short period of time, he finally analyzed more than 1,100 planar laws. Hence, he achieved enlightenment and entered a miraculous state. It was as if he had completely integrated into the entire world of mages, seeing countless planes which were densely packed like a beehive. In the beehive, however, there was a huge blank space where there was not a single plane, only a terrifying energy that was very different from that of the world of mages. It was Mage Merlin, an evil life form from an alien world. Only then did Mage Illumin see Mage Merlin's true colors. He had actually devoured thousands of planes. He was depleting the foundation of the world of mages. Mage Illumin, which level have you reached? Many legendary mages in the Lanka plane naturally sensed the special fluctuation just now. All of them looked at Mage Illumin, who had caused a huge commotion. They were all very excited. After all, the existence of the arcane mage was speculated by the mages. No one knew what exactly an arcane mage was. Whether Mage Illumin had taken that critical step actually concerned the rise and fall of the entire mage civilization. Mage Illumin glanced at the many mages and nodded. I did cross that threshold. Now I should be an arcane mage. I've completely comprehended the profound meaning of spells. Haha! This is wonderful. An arcane mage has been born among us. Arcane mage. So it seems that our choice was correct. Analyses on the planar laws would definitely allow someone to take the critical step. With Mage Illumin, the great arcane mage, what's a mere evil alien life form? Many mages were very thrilled. The success of Mage Illumin meant that all the mages had taken the right path. One of them had already reached the destination. However, Mage Illumin was not so optimistic. He said in a low voice, that evil alien life form is stronger than we imagined. But no matter what, the evil alien life form should be banished. This world belongs to us, to the mages. With that, a special fluctuation emanated from Mage Illumin's body. He actually disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye, without even a trace of law fluctuation. This was an arcane mage, the supreme entity in the mage civilization. Now he had finally been born.